Welcome to The Fighter with Kris Sims. Thank you so much for making us a part of your Thanksgiving long weekend. If you're working, thank you so much for the work that you do. If you've been able to take some time off to spend it with loved ones over the long weekend, again, thank you for what you do. And a special thank you to folks who are volunteering out at food banks and places where you are needed to help folks who really need the help. Because at the end of the day, we have to fight for each other to be able to afford life. Okay. And one of the big reasons why a lot of people do struggle is because the government takes around half of our paychecks. If you do kind of a little bit of mental math and you imagine, say that you work for salary and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, it arrives in your bank account. Imagine it being almost double. That's what various levels of government, okay, municipal, provincial, federal, that's about what various levels of government take from you. It's about half your paycheck. So if you imagine that your paycheck is almost doubled instead of what it is right now, what could you do with that money yourself? Could you afford more nutritious food? Could you maybe afford to get a tutor for your kid? Could you pay off some of your bills? These are all really important questions. And government, unfortunately, gets in its own way and it gets in your way. And it winds up costing you a lot of money through taxes and on lost out prosperity. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about today, because right now we're in this kind of holding pattern. We're kind of in a chess match right now when it comes to natural resources, things like pipelines getting approved in Canada. The federal government, under new Prime Minister Mark Carney, has said verbally that it wants to change things, that it wants to approve things, that it wants to build stuff. But we haven't seen it happen yet. So the question is, when is this actually going to happen? Because keep in mind, folks, when we're actually getting pipelines built and we're getting our product out to market, things like oil and gas, we get tax revenue out of it. We get royalties out of it. So there's more money flowing into government to be able to perhaps cut your income taxes, reduce sales taxes, okay, provide more services. All the folks that keep on talking about wanting more hospitals and schools, guess what? Those are built using tax dollars. And one of the ways that governments do get tax revenue is from getting things like pipelines approved. So, where are we going with this? What's going to happen with this new office that Prime Minister Mark Carney has set up? Apparently, he's sitting there waiting for an applicant. Somebody's got to come along and say, hey, I want to build a pipeline. I want to build something that'll actually generate wealth and not cost taxpayers money, that will put money into the pot. But after 10 years of no, 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 and tons of red stoplights, private companies are leery to start building big things here in Canada again. So, interestingly, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has said, okay, Alberta will be the applicant. We're going to put our papers into this magical office of approvals here at the federal government level and say, all right, your move. So she's going to make it so that the province itself is the applicant to build a pipeline similar to what Northern Gateway was supposed to be. So that's running from Alberta out to the British Columbia coast. Two huge things. One, she has stated emphatically, taxpayers will not pay for this pipeline, which is good. We do not want taxpayers paying for a pipeline. We want government getting out of the way so that companies can build pipelines with their own money. So that's one. And the second element is she is now basically putting the ball back in Mark Carney's court, because now it's up to him to say yes or no to Alberta. What's going to happen when it comes to things like the future of pipelines in this country? What's happening right now within the halls of power in the federal government? Because we just saw on Blacklock's Reporter that they've even done an internal study. There's an internal report within the federal government saying, hey, this mandate trying to force people to stop buying gasoline and diesel powered vehicles and to mandate people to only buy battery powered cars, it's not economically feasible. Who knew? We know somebody who knows. Let's find out. Joining me now is Dan McTeague. He is a good friend of the show, and he is with Canadians for Affordable Energy. Dan, I saw this headline in the outstanding Blacklock's Reporter. I encourage everybody to go get a membership there. And if I were to summarize what it was is, hey, it actually looks like the federal government had their own internal report showing, shocker, apparently forcing everybody to only buy battery powered cars and banning gasoline powered vehicles isn't economical. Were you surprised to read this headline, Dan?
I had a Homer Simpson moment. Duh.
I know, right?
I mean, seriously, come on. These people live in this some kind of parallel world where things are just fine, and money grows off trees, and it's a land of milk and honey. But the reality is, and you speak to anyone, even those who own it, is that they find their complications is expensive, unreliable, a lot of anxiety. We're not ready for that, and we won't be anytime soon. Certainly not, and I may say this in my generation.
I have to ask you this every now and then. So I'm from BC originally, spend a lot of time on Parliament Hill, but I
Mhm.
find sometimes politicians get inside their own heads so much that
Yeah.
they start imagining this little kind of, it's almost like a Sim City, like computer program or a little utopia, that if only we all lived together, like on a little collective, and we could all drive little battery powered vehicles or golf carts, and we could all grow our own vegetables and trade with each other, it'd be fine. Now, if you want to go do that in some mountain village in the Kootenays on your own time, like that's your thing. But what gets me, Dan, is that adults who work in the federal government still think that they can do this on a macro scale, that they can impose their little beliefs or daydreams on millions of people. Like, do you find that there's kind of a disconnect going on here?
Yeah, it's almost anti-civil. It's certainly anti-civilization. I mean, it's
Mm.
like living in a state of nature, eating acorns, wearing animal skins, but no fires because you're worried about your carbon footprint. It's Hobbesian in the worst sense of the word. But I don't want to get into the technical or into the literal part of it. But it does show a significant detachment from around us. It comes down to fundamental ignorance, couched in this idea that you're somehow being intelligent by doing this. But you always have the comfort of having that government paycheck, so you really don't care. That changes, by the way, November 4th, when we get a deficit reading that is going to shock and alarm. And I'm pretty damn sure bond rating agencies, unlike what they've done over the past little while, thinking that the CPP is fungible, that it can be used as collateral, are going to wake a lot of people up because they're not going to put up with the nonsense. One or another, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we've seen 10 years of drift. Now reality is starting to hit, and it's hitting very hard everywhere. No one is escaping this, whether it's a devaluation of their assets or their inability to make ends meet or keep a job, much less worry about how they're going to put food on the table at the end of the week.
I had to ask you because you did mention the deficit, and I wasn't going to go there, but I'm in Ottawa right now. Things are feeling nervous right now. Like you can sense it because we're coming down to the wire for the deadline for the budget to be released. And I'm hearing all sorts of wackadoodle stuff like they're going to start trying to call corporate welfare capital investment. That's not great. And we're hearing the parliamentary budget officers say things like, yeah, you're being way too expansive in what you guys are calling capital or what you guys are calling assets. Basically, what it sounds like is they're playing funny tricks with the books and they're
They
trying to
are.
hide the fact that they're blowing a lot of money. Are you really concerned about this budget coming up? Are you feeling the same sense?
I am, because the word comes back creative accounting. This is Enron 2.0. And if they try that stunt, no one's going to believe them. And whether it's Fitch or Moody's or DBRS Morningstar or Standard and Poor's, if they go along with that, well, and it says something about the companies. Maybe they should get the hell out of the business of rating. But this is going to hurt. It's going to impact. And Mark Carney is going to become a conservative much quicker than we've seen already. He's going to have to take these measures because we've been through this before. Remember, I was a member of Parliament from 1993 until 2011, and I was
Mhm.
there when Paul Martin was very concerned, and the IMF was prepared to take us over, and we had no growth, and things did not look very promising. Ironically, one of the things that got us out of this rut wasn't just fiscal discipline. We were able to sell a lot more oil to the United States and built a few pipelines in the meantime, which is why we're back, 30 years later to the same problems we've created before. We've gone away from this idea that, balancing budgets will balance themselves, or modern monetary theory and all sorts of wackadoodle ideas that were out there. But this is the Liberal Party is going to change because, frankly, it's not just about the Liberal Party losing seats. It's about Canadians losing their shirts.
I can't help it. I got to bring it back to this too, because I was there at the same time you were. And
Yeah.
I remember booking you way back then for mainstream media political shows, the 5 o'clock daily shows right from the foyer of the House of Commons. And you're right. Prime Minister Jean Chrétien and the Finance Minister Paul Martin and all of you guys over there on the Liberal benches, it was a different government. And I'm not just talking the individual MPs. I'm talking about the analysis, the fiscal responsibility. There were some heavyweights that were working behind the scenes there too. And, it's not easy to balance a budget, right? That must not have been easy. We saw hospitals shutting down across the prairies, right? They had to make some serious cuts because eventually the lenders start saying no more money. And so they did make some serious changes. And I guess I wanted to pick your brain on this, Dan, because you and I were talking all through the Trudeau years about just how unserious these folks were, like saying flippantly stupid things, like you said, if the budget will balance itself and there's no financial case for natural gas, like there's just nonsense, non-grown up things to say. You mentioned Mark Carney's going to have to become a conservative faster. Do you see an opportunity for this current Liberal government, the people who are there now, to start bringing on some more of the adults in the room? Again, do you see a chance of them shifting back to more fiscal responsibility after, I guess it all weighs on this budget, right? We're going to get these indicators, aren't we?
We are. We're also going to have to hear from Mark Carney that he's walking away from net zero. The stupidity of it all, of trying to strangulate the economy by shutting down and by imposing hardship on manufacturing, on business, and then ultimately on consumers. And the effect is real. I mean, a Canadian dollar takes 140 pennies to buy a US dollar. That's adding 24 cents a liter to the price of gasoline. Imagine what it's doing for food and every other commodity, whether it is made here or not. So I think Mark Carney's got to find new religion, and he's got to find it very quickly, or he will be not just quick, he'll be dead.
I'm trying to be hopeful. He did kick the can 1 year by 1 year on this EV mandate thing. Do you think he's going to climb down from it? Because we started off the conversation about the electric vehicle mandate. We call it the gas and diesel vehicle ban. I think you guys call it something similar. I see your petitions all the time on Facebook. It's outstanding that you guys are fighting this thing. So for folks who don't realize, right, as of right now, they're going to start restricting the sale of normal gasoline and diesel powered vehicles at the dealership level in just over 1 year's time.
Right.
Dan, you've worked in the industry directly. You know this file. Has this given any breathing room to any of the dealers? Like, what are the dealers saying now?
None whatsoever. There are people not lining up to their dealerships to look for vehicles. We know, of course, the announcement this morning, a government internal study, there's not enough availability of charging ports. There's no money for subsidies. We've had several of these companies either walk away or go bankrupt altogether. And I'm not just talking Northvolt and Lion. There's a bevy of others that have simply packed up and said it's time to go. But you are imposing on people something which doesn't exist. We don't have that many electric vehicles in Canada available for purchase in 2027, even if we wanted to. And now, of course, the real concern isn't just that consumers are going to be forced to do something that they don't want to do in a country, which, by the way, today is getting a little colder, at least certainly here in Southern Ontario. We're actually now in a point where who's going to buy these things beyond the Canadian border? The Americans have said no to EV mandates. The Trump administration made it very clear long before tariffs came out, no more EV mandates. Therefore, if Americans are going to be forced to buy them, who's going to build them if there's no market for that? So we are facing significant tidal wave opposition to what's going on and where the government has been for the past several years. It is part of that larger net zero framework. Carbon taxes 1, 2, and 3. That's, of course, the one that's suspended for now. The second one, the clean fuel standard, which Kris, you and I have done a lot of work on in the past in BC, where it's 20 cents a liter. And the third one, the industrial carbon tax, the OBP, the output-based pricing system. And then you have a number of other layers of regulation that is placed on industry and on investment and on consumers, the totality of which is making us poorer, making this country less of a great place to live. We've gone in the world index from third most livable, most enviable place to live to 33. That's a pretty significant drop in 10 years, and it isn't by accident. This is self-inflicted. And so because these are Canadian policies made by Canadian politicians, it's time for them to change, or we're simply all going to go over the cliff at the same time.
I didn't realize we're at 33.
We are in living standards. Yeah, in 2024, Canada fell to the 33rd level in terms of quality of life metric. And I mean, there are people are going to say, well, there's all sorts of metrics that are out there, but you won't hear about that because mainstream media doesn't want to tell you that. Confident, safe that as long as they don't mention it, they'll continue to get access to, dollops of federal funding, which I'm sure has to be cut. All of it has to be cut. There isn't anything that can be saved now and salvaged, least of all the EV mandates, because it costs so much. It can't be attained. It can't be realized. Maybe just better for us if you want EVs, then we'll get them from China. But you watch out. Don't bring them anywhere because they might explode on you.
Oh, that's always the factor too, right? Before I let you go, Dan, and I really appreciate you giving us a time after this Thanksgiving long weekend. So we really appreciate it. I wanted to quickly shift gears here because I heard an old word that I hadn't heard in a little while when Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney went down and visited US President Donald Trump recently, and that was Keystone. So we know that Trump is in favor of Keystone, and I've heard Carney being asked about this now again. Do you think there's a chance to just revive this thing? So for folks who don't know, this was a pipeline that had been approved by the Trump administration, and it was supposed to go down from Alberta through to the States. It's the Keystone XL pipeline. But the Biden administration killed it, and the Trudeau administration didn't seem to care. So do you think there's a chance now with this whole let's build Canada thing that Carney's talking about? Is there a chance to put that deal back on the table?
Well, I certainly pricked my ears when I heard the statement, possibility last week. This might be back on the table. I had asked Pete Sessions, who came to Catherine Swift's, Jocelyn Bamford's Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Business of Canada, had a session, and we talked about this at great length. And because the pipeline is already in place right to the U.S. border within inches of it, it really takes the Trump administration to come around and say, yeah, we're going to try to do in 2.5 years. We're going to try to finish this off, even though Joe Biden sold all the pipes out and whatever. But the rights of way are there, and U.S. refiners are begging Canada for its heavy oil. Why? You can't make diesel with light, tight shale oil, and you can't get it from Venezuela. It's a basket case. Mexico, salt in their wells, so no one else has got heavy oil except Canada, and that's the solution. I think it truly is our trump card, if we could put it another way, because it gives the Americans something that gives them energy reliability, and it gives Canada something it desperately needs. Selling 1.2 million barrels a day will add probably 0.75% to the GDP, to our economy, thousands of jobs, and prosperity for years to come, something we haven't heard in a very long time. But all it takes is one man saying, the name Mark Carney, coming out and saying, I give up, this was a bad idea. I don't think you can get rid of the oil and gas sector. I don't want to get rid of them. I want them to prosper because every other country in the world wants our oil and our natural gas and our LNG.
I find when you're in a problem and you're in a pickle, it's important to do the easy stuff first. Now, nobody's saying that building a pipeline is actually physically easy to do, but in the realm of politics, if it's already built right within an inch of the US border, and all it would take is, President Trump, US President Trump, to say, yeah, let's give her. Isn't that kind of high on the list of easier things to do when it comes to international infrastructure?
I have a feeling that's why Danielle Smith was smiling a couple of weeks ago. It may already be there, but Mark Carney's got a problem with having to swallow his own pride, knowing he was wrong, and recognizing that the way of the past is certainly the way of the future. And as I said earlier, when I took on the oil and gas sector, certainly the downstream, the biggest concern Jean-Chrétien and Paul Martin had was that I was going to go after the upstream. And Paul Martin made it very clear to me, you can't go after them because they're going to save our bacon. They're the ones creating revenue, creating opportunities by building pipelines and selling to a customer. Let's just get our energy to the rest of the world. Every other country is demanding it. Every other country is saying Canada first. I don't see why we would say no. And if a couple of people on the side want to, sit around and protest and things, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But the good of the many comes before the interests and the obstruction of a few. We've heard that the past 10 years. You've harmed the Canadian economy. Step aside, Clyde.
Lastly, two more quick questions here. I wanted to get your take on, because I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it yet, on Premier Danielle Smith's move when she said, okay, you guys have this special office that y'all have set up about building Canada, and we're sitting here waiting to do speedy approval and to rubber stamp things as long as they pass all the tests. But shocker, Dan, there's no applicants. There's no comers. Some private company doesn't want to leave their wallet on our park bench in Canada. Frankly, I'm not surprised based on what's happened the past 10 years. And real quick, from a taxpayer's perspective and how much money Canada has lost out on here, since 2015, through all of the different strangled and canceled and slowed down natural resources projects, Canada has lost out on around $600 billion with a B.
Yeah.
Now, that includes everything. That includes mines and everything else like that. But that's a heck of a lot of chunk of change. Put that into perspective. That could cover the income tax bills, the federal income tax bills for the entire populations of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba for 10 years. So it is a staggering amount of money we lost out on. So wanted to know what you thought. I thought it was a chess move when Danielle Smith came and said, okay, there's no private company that is willing to put the application in to the federal government of Speedy Approval Office. We're going to do it. Alberta is now the applicant. Now, we don't want taxpayers' money building a pipeline, but she's going to use taxpayers' money and the government to go through all the hoops, to fill out all the paperwork, to do all the consultations. I think she's calling his bluff. What did you think of that move?
Yeah, I think it was a brilliant move. It was a smart tactic, and it's actually a tactic that's going to save Canada. Yes, us folks out here in Eastern Canada who think that we can, get money in equalization, money just grows off trees. If she's not successful, it won't be Alberta's disappointment. Continue to line up at the food banks, especially, after we saw the stuff on the Thanksgiving weekend. Look, we need to sell more of what the world wants and which we have plenty of. Having the third, fourth, and fifth largest assets or reserves, it makes a lot of sense. The United States is running out of energy. It's not going to be able to continue its fracking, its wells forever. And the world, through whether it be through British Columbia or however you get it there, is going to want our brand versus others because there's no geopolitical risk. But if we don't do these things, I mean, the road to economic perdition is pretty clear. You are going to fail as a nation economically, and you are going to see social disintegration on a scale that is going to curl our hair, literally. I've been through this, and I've seen this happen before. There is now a national purpose for getting oil and gas to markets. And if provinces want to stand in the way of doing that, like British Columbia, you and I worked on this with John Horgan, using every tool in the toolbox, even though they don't have the constitutional wherewithal. Well, then maybe BC would like to give back the $50 billion they cost the rest of the country in building the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, which would have been built by Kinder Morgan for zero. Okay, so I get a little annoyed when people say, well, we have a deficit problem, but you allowed every Tom, Dick, and Harry to take pot shots at this, use lawfare, use all sorts of means to drag this project on. If that's what the country's going to be, it's not open for business. Mr. Carney will find his time in office nasty, brutish, and very short.
Dan, I was going to ask you about David Eby's comments, but you just answered it anyway. Dan McTeague, head of Canadians for Affordable Energy. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving long weekend. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Great to be here, and thanks for having me once again, Kris.
You bet. Once again, that is Dan McTeague. He is the head of Canadians for Affordable Energy. He was the guy, and you can still ask him, he was the guy that used to be able to predict the gas price tomorrow. Remember that guy? That's Dan McTeague. He also, as he mentioned, was a longtime member of Parliament under Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's government. I strongly recommend you go sign up for his newsletter and analysis because obviously, pretty smart guy. Folks, we hope that you're having a peaceful and wonderful Thanksgiving long weekend. Thank you so much for giving us part of your time today. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, head on over to Juno News, sign up to become a member, a supporter of Juno News, because this is where independent journalism lives. Thank you so much for watching.